Oh, fucking rise and grind. Happy New Year.
Happy
New
New
Year,
Year.
same old boys.
Status pending.
Shane, maybe you can explain, because you still didn't give me the full explanation. So your background image, it's from a Zoom, some kind of a jackpot.
Yeah,
thing, maybe you can explain the image here.
I don't know why it's tickled you so much.
Because we were having like a serious discussion before we started recording, and I was just looking at your fucking background.
It's a Jackbox game. I played with some friends over the weekend. It's one of the new ones, and it's a fun one. You like draw fighting characters. You know, it's sort of like a head to like the T-shirt one that we've played a couple of times. It's like where they go head to head. But the gimmick of it, which is why it's kind of clever, is each match is like for a specific title. So it's like weirdest origin, and then one person has to draw a character who has a weird origin, and then the second person draws a character based on your drawing. Like they don't know what the headline is. Like they don't know what they're fighting for, but they have to guess based upon your drawing. So I did that drawing, and then my friend did that one,
which Shane is pointing at over his shoulders is monarchist gritty and parliamentary gritty.
Jesus
and we have
Christ.
Gritty, the fucking Philadelphia Gritty with the crown on. I don't know. I don't know why that tickled me so much, quite frankly.
I like how when you first asked me, you said, "Did you get that from Reddit?" Which I took as an insult.
Wait, because no, because I didn't. It didn't register. What I recognized it as was like, those like little ball, the memes with like Poland ball or like fucking, anarcho-capitalist ball. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's wow.
That's what it looked like to me.
Haven't thought about that in a while.
Yeah. Well, I'm in some dark corners of the internet.
I know this.
I gotta keep. I gotta keep tabs.
I see your retweets, and they're consistently fucking bizarre. I don't know how you find these people. I will say this again. Let's just reestablish this at the beginning of the new year. You are the anthropologist of Twitter. You are on Twitter anthropology.
Thank you.
Wow. What's the one that you follow? Lynn
Pennington? Lynn Pennington. Well, I find him and people like him by just searching at real Donald Trump and dinar, like Iraqi dinar. And then like any of the really good ones, I'll follow them. And so I'll get to see all the other funny shit they tweet. Like this guy, like he tweeted like he added a fake, like a Mitch McConnell parody account. And he's like, "You are a communist and the people of Kentucky see through you," or some shit like that. But it's like, shit like that is so funny to me. It's so good. It's so perfect for like one of those accounts that's just, the default Avi, like no image, and then just like their first name and then like 8 numbers right after it. And like, yeah. And all they do is at the president and sometimes parody accounts of the president and like tell them to revalue the dinar. And they tweet other really funny stuff too.
Like these are like boomers that have raised people. Presumably. Yeah. Like they've replicated themselves.
Yeah,
there's more of them rising in the ranks of age in our nation.
Right. Well, there's one of them actually that I followed for a while that's I pegged for a boomer because for like a long time I've watched his evolution. Like he was like just one of those default profile pic, people adding the president, and he started tweeting more and more. And then he like changed his profile picture to a picture of himself recently. I'm like, oh, okay, he's maybe like 40. But
really?
I thought this was an 85-year-old by the way he posted.
Oh boy. Oh, that's worse. We got Gen Xers out there masquerading as bewildered boomers.
Yeah. I love a good bewildered boomer on the internet.
There's just so many.
Hey man, one day we're gonna be those guys. You can't knock them too much.
It's true. I'm already. I can't talk too much. I'm already bewildered by technology and computers and stuff like that. Yeah. So
I spent a lot of time on TikTok. I don't know how the fuck I would have gotten through quarantine without TikTok, because I think, if anything, what we needed to do during quarantine is to like desperately try to have our moods be regulated at least. So like, look, I could have sat for an hour and been sad about the fact that I couldn't do anything during quarantine. Or I could sit there and just like mindlessly scroll on TikTok, giving, President Xi all of my thoughts and information. The latter proved to be much more generous for me. But it also helped me kind of know what the kids are doing, which it turns out is not terribly exciting.
You gotta get video games, man. You need to
I do-
kill
dude,
several
I've been
hours at a
playing-
time.
I played Civ 6. I mean, really, for the past 2 weeks, if I have not been working, I've been playing Civ 6, basically. But yeah, I played it all weekend. I had a 3-day weekend. I played it all weekend. It's so good, man.
I've been playing GTA 5
Oh, that's
online.
right. Yeah, you have a PlayStation. Or an Xbox.
Which is-
You have an Xbox.
I'm doing it. I was doing it on Xbox, and then I got this Windows PC, which I've been playing it on. And to say the least, the community is toxic. It is.
Yeah.
It's very odd because like you're playing, and then all of a sudden these modders come on, whatever that means, and they just like blow you to smithereens, and you don't even know
whatever that means.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like all your money is gone or something.
You're in the age range to know what a modder is. That's a willful choice. That's not an age thing. I know what
I
a modder
don't need
is.
the comings and goings. I don't know what sort of hacking.
I once was a modder. I'll put it out there. I once dabbled to mod, not in Grand Theft Auto Online, but in earlier games. You know, I was telling you guys right before we started recording that basically my semester only ended a few days ago. It was on January 1st, and now I have a few weeks of time off, and I've just been like hanging out and deliberately like not been online, and I was like playing like, you know, not multiplayer games, but like, you know, something single player that I could just like kind of sink into and not have to think about anything else. And I gotta say, in those couple days thus far of like not really being online, not posting, not checking the feed, every time I do pop in, it's so like apparent how weird and hostile it is when you step away for a day. Like there's just like I was like trying to log in yesterday, and there were like 4 different sets of attacks happening, and there was like a bean man,
Yes,
and there was
I saw
something
the Bean
else,
Man
and I was
vaguely.
just like, you know what, I could spend this precious time on the toilet away from my computer figuring out who this bean gentleman is, or I could continue to look and find tips and tricks to get achievements in my various single player games on different community wikis, and that's what I've been doing on my game off time.
Ooh, I just, this is the thing. I was talking to our good friend Mel yesterday, and I was like, I'm so bad at like knowing the kind of social comings and goings of who's beefing with who on Twitter and stuff. And I know that there's like,
Yeah.
I'm just so, you know, how bad I am at this.
I'm
Like,
blissfully unaware of a lot of shit like that.
and I did see the bean thing, but I couldn't really wrap my head around it. I'm not entirely certain who that guy was, but I understand that they've deleted their account.
It's
which
back.
is so
It's back, I think.
really.
Well, are we even
The
talking about
beans
the
are
same person?
back.
The John Roderick guy
John
or something. That's who
something.
you're talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah,
About
yeah,
the
yeah,
story with his kid or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, which is, I'm like, Jesus.
I didn't even know it was about beans because I got like 3 tweets into that thread, and I was like, "What is this even about?" And I scrolled and saw his thread was like 30 tweets long, and I was like, "I don't care. I don't care enough. I don't need to know enough why everyone's so mad to even read this."
No.
Chris, I want to bottle that phrase. I didn't even know it was about beans.
Yeah.
Just
But I guess-
imagine Trump saying that.
Who would have known? Who would have known? Who would have known?
That
You get
bean
him downstairs.
guy. Bing bang bing bing bing. Oh God.
Even today, like I was, that's, you know, it was like those days where, of course, like Maple Cocaine has always said, like, there's always one
Yes.
main character on Twitter, and the objective of the game is to not be him or her any one day. And I was trying to like just ignore that and trying to carry through. Like this morning, it was like back to work, barely got like, you know, a time off for like a little refractory period after the end of the fucking a horrible year at the end of our crumbling empire. And I just like sat down this morning and I was kind of like ruminating on this before we were recording tonight. And I was like, okay, 9:30, here I am. And I have the rest of my life to live in America and work and do this. And the feeling on me was just like, we have like 2 weeks before there's a new administration, and the thing that everyone's been freaking out about for the last 4 years, you know, the orange man is going to be gone. But I was like, what is there to look forward to.
Just a big sucking void.
Yeah.
Just the vast expanse of space, man. Nothing, yeah.
I really felt this like stark feeling of despair. Like, are there kind of like milestones that we have that we're looking towards, that we think that, you know, this year, hey, you know, we have something to look forward to by June or August or something, or hey, I can't wait until, you know, July when I can go tubing with my friends on the river, or, you know, hey, we can go to is that not you don't go tubing?
Are you speaking from your own experience, or are you trying to imagine what someone might do?
I love tubing.
Okay. Clip that.
Jason, no. I love every July 4th we get off on York Avenue and we tube down the East River. I'm kidding. We obviously do this up in the country. Can you imagine like the polymers just dissolving in the East River of the tube that I'm on?
Remember the Seinfeld episode with Kramer's swimming in the East River?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but like, yeah, tubing, you know, when you go down a river and you bring some beers or a little, you know, Poland Spring bottle full of whiskey or something like that. Is this not resonating at all?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I grew up in a city, okay?
Yeah,
the only tubes had frayed wires in them. Okay? And you wouldn't want to bring liquids near them.
Oh, it's so much fun. Anyway, the things that the communal things that we would be otherwise looking forward to in a normal year of like, hey, we're gonna all family
the
reunion.
Annual tubing day. I can't get over it. What kind of thing is this to do?
Oh, it's the best thing. Basically, the fun part about tubing is that your ass is wet the whole time, and occasionally you break your coccyx bone on a rock.
It sounds really amazing.
Oh, it's a blast, man. It's a blast.
You know, you can just drink in your house. You don't even need to call anyone else. You can just sit there, TV on or TV off, lights on, lights off. It's fine.
Putting yourself in some sort of mortal danger.
That's what the drinking is for.
Well, yeah.
Right.
I'd say you're even more mortal danger, yeah.
Well, that's just, you know, that's just a matter of course.
It's long-term versus short-term. Really.
Right, exactly.
That's the distinction.
No, I'm talking short-term risk with drinking. I'm talking that you get a tube out, you stick it in your mouth, you pour everything on top.
Right.
I've seen it, actually.
It's happened.
Yeah.
I remember there was a fucking kid. It's not important. All right, I'll tell you. There was a kid. There was a kid in college.
Tube boy.
He was a tubeman. There was a kid in college who we had a party, and he was just a really odd guy, and he came up to me and he was like, "Hey man," I was like, "Hey, good to see you. I guess, you know, welcome. Come on in. What would you like to drink?" I was like, "We have a beer. I think maybe we had a keg or something, or we've got jungle juice." And he was like, "Well, I can't have sugar." And I was like, "Well, that's the jungle juice certainly out," because it was all Kool-Aid and whatever. And my roommate's arm hair from stirring it with his arm. And then, you know, we've got beer, but that's like, it's got sugar in that too. You can't really have that. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm like, listen, really all we have is like Everclear, because that's what we made the thing. He was like, yeah, I'll have that. And I was like, on ice? Neat. How that shit like fucking evaporates before you even put it, by the time you put it to your lips. And he drank a glass of it in front of me on ice, and I still remember that to this day. How did that tie into tubing?
I used to do that all the time. And then what you do is then I was like a heavy smoker too. And so then what you can do is you can blow fireballs.
Yeah.
It's really impressive and cool.
Well, I've been using
to like
everybody
blind drunk and be like, "Hey baby, check this out."
Everybody
accidentally vomit. Like,
oh. They love it when you do it in their apartment near the curtains.
Yeah, exactly. What's the big fucking problem? What's the problem?
I've been using Everclear as hand sanitizer. I use this all the time. I bought like 6 little tiny spray bottles from like a cosmetic store or something, and I just fill it up with Everclear or Graves or whatever, just 95%
Graves,
alcohol.
that was the one I used to do. Yeah, that was the one.
That's the cheaper one.
Yeah,
the cheaper
that's
one.
why. Yeah, I used to get that and one of those giant cans of pineapple juice. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
and just clip them with like
I've
a knife.
never even heard of Graves. Graves is like another great grain alcohol.
Dude,
Yeah.
it is
See, I think in Virginia, I don't even think we had Everclear because it's a Commonwealth and like the liquor stores are government owned and regulated or whatever. Like I don't think that I'm trying to remember. I don't think we even had full strength Everclear. I don't think they could sell
Graves is actually from the other Commonwealth. It's from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Dude, you got to get fucking Graves. It's brewed in East Boston, bro. It's a fucking distillery. You got to see it. The shit will blow up like a fucking tinderbox if a fucking plane from Logan ever crashed into it.
I think Pennsylvania's a Commonwealth too.
It is, and Kentucky.
It should be all one thing.
It's absurd distinction.
One thing, one set of laws that comes out of my mouth and is through diktat imposed on the entire country. That's how it should work. Anyway.
That's how you want to do it.
The whole country should be reorganized into like 5 administrative zones. Enough of these states, local governments. Bah.
Kind of, right? I don't know.
Yes.
Do we
agree
advocate?
with me? No, agree with me.
Do we advocate for the balkanization or the centralization of the United States of America?
Why
Because
not
there's no way that our current form of government is going to last like 40 years. Like under what circumstances do we see our current form of government lasting for another 40 years or another like 4 months for that matter?
Man, I hate to bring us back here. I know that our Patreons have kind of become like the COVID update ones, but like I've been thinking that have you seen like all the like the tampering and the destruction of the vaccines going on by like the pharmacists who destroyed a bunch of them, the rest of them are like going what are they, they're expiring because there's no like plan for distribution. There was that one person who was like deliberately fucking with the vaccine. I think they were a pharmacist. They were deliberately tampering with it and then administering it to people with the hopes that then it wouldn't work, and so they would stop believing that vaccines would work. And this was like like hundreds of doses or something that this person, and they were doing it as a sort of anti-vax, COVID conspiracy kind of shtick.
Look,
and it's just,
I want to believe. I can't help but react to that, Shane. I mean, I want to believe that that's just like obviously like an outlier that isn't something that's in the grand scheme of thing. It's more of a a statement more than it is like something that we need to control for. If we're talking about the distribution, but the distribution alone, like I hear your words in my head every time I think about this, because you talked about this like many months ago where you were like, we didn't build any hospitals.
Right.
Like
yeah.
we didn't build like this goes into like the thesis of the things that we really need to think about and criticize the incoming Biden administration, not for the things that they're doing as much as for the things that they are not doing. And the fact that there wasn't a huge government jobs program created around just COVID management in general, even let alone the fact that we're not using the United States military, and half of our tax dollars that goes to it to help this thing and to do, it's continuing to go into ridiculous imperial foreign wars and bases within dozens of countries around the world. But even just to have a government jobs program to employ the upwards of 800,000 people that are claiming job losses every fucking week, including the 1.4 million healthcare workers that were laid off in April, that were laid off because certain service lines weren't profitable because people weren't going to the doctor for normal things like colonoscopies and kind of screening sorts of shits. The point is that it's fucking unconscionable that we don't have a government jobs program that are employing us and to help rectify the fucked up situation that we're in. It's fucked up that we don't have a whole triage program to build community hospitals, public hospitals around the country in order to handle the fact that, if you fall and get hit by a car or something like that, and you go to a hospital in LA, there's no fucking ICU bed for you. So now people that aren't even COVID related are dying from those things. And also, like, would be great in New York City? Fucking clean available free public bathrooms that are ubiquitous for everywhere.
Yeah.
That's like the biggest gripe that I have living in New York is like there's fucking nowhere to take a piss.
I mean, the thing you were talking about in terms of the ICU beds, I mean, that like literally happened to me and Carrie that night where she had her knee dislocated. Yes! Like, it was just literally like, we can't take you to the hospital. I mean, that was that, you know, having dealt with more kind of like health related issues this past year than I probably ever had before, right? Like, not just me personally, but like, you know, friends and family and stuff. Like, it was really astounding. Like that to me, and you know, that happened like right, like mid-December. It was like right around when my classes ended, and like it was such a moment of like, I mean, obviously at the time it was intense panic, but in reflection, it's like that is like more so than anything. That's what I'm going to remember about that year. It was like, it was such a dramatic moment of like, oh, there is no infrastructure. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I could call and you know, I've probably called fucking 911 3 times in my entire life, the 2 of which happened last year. And the second time, people showed up and they were just like, we literally can't do anything. Now, obviously, there are a lot of services like that don't work for lots of people and haven't for a long time. So I'm not like bemoaning it or saying it's extra special that it happened to me or something. It was just a personal moment of recognition of just like, you know, oh, there's no net of any kind. Like, there's no protection. There's nothing underneath the surface of this. And if this continues to go on, I mean, I think like, you know, not to be too dark about it, but I did see a post the other day that somebody had said where they were like, you know, most of the people who are going to die from this virus haven't even caught it yet. And Lord. when I saw that, I was like, you know what, that makes sense. And obviously that's the more pessimistic view. I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But like, given what we were just talking about in terms of the vaccines and stuff, you know, there being no distribution for them fucking just expiring or getting tampered with by like crazy fucking fanatics and shit, right? Like, there might not be like an end to this year. And as you were saying, you know, right, like in terms of like looking forward to the new administration, right? Like, what is the real idea here? Like, there's gonna be a task force. Like I want like a plague czar to come on TV and be like, we have temporarily like shut down everything. I am the state. We are going to redirect all energies. If you make over X amount of money, your property will be seized and turned into triage stations. Otherwise, this is going to grow out of control, because the alternative to that is like, you know, simultaneous to this, right? We've had like, you know, American billionaires have basically doubled their wealth during the course of just the last fucking year. I mean, I was looking at it, at this graphic here, fucking, you know, I mean, they've all increased in their wealth, right? The you know, the big one that obviously a lot of people talk about is like Bezos. Went from, you know, around $110 billion to around $190 billion. But the craziest one is fucking Elon Musk. Went from 25 billion to 154 billion, which is a 524% increase.
The thing about
That's
this
insane!
too, the thing about this too that really strikes me when I look at it in these terms is that like there's no starker an illustration of the way in which like their profits come from like there's the upward distribution of wealth, like the way in which like it's our money, the money that we should get, the money that we all create, that makes them fucking billionaires. Like, for a period of time when people all over are losing their jobs, there's less money for us, and the money's still there. It's just fucking going to them, right?
Yes. Another crazy wrinkle in that too is I was thinking like you know, in terms of like housing, right? I was wondering, because there was some speculation there has been now for a couple of years that we're doing for another big housing crash. And I was sort of curious about it. And I was like, what's up with like housing prices? And they've actually gone up as well. And the reason is because, first of all, you know, when people are out of money and out of jobs and they get like foreclosed on, even though there was like a short moratorium and stuff on that, right? Like, who ends up retaining that? It's like fucking like banks and stuff. And then other people who already have money can then like invest and buy it. But also, you know, all of the like kind of like, you know, big tech companies and places like that were like really easily able to streamline and be like, okay, we're going to go remote. After a few months of that, you know, there was a recognition, and we talked about this way back when in terms of like Facebook, a couple of those, you know, companies that are aggregated in like really expensive real estate markets like fucking, you know, San Francisco or whatever, right? All those people just left because they were like, fuck it, we could just move somewhere way cheaper Right?
Right.
And so because of that, like housing prices are being driven up everywhere. And I was just really like that was just so shocking that like that this hasn't even broken it yet. Like somehow this whole edifice is still in place when we had like record fucking unemployment, and like you were saying, Chris, right? Like, you know, there's like the velocity of money has just dropped. Nobody like goes to, you know, the bars and restaurants and stuff like that. Nobody goes to like their local stores now. If everybody's buying shit, you're gonna buy it online, right? And so that's part of the reason why, like, you know, somebody like Bezos, his net worth has fucking increased, because whatever share of the market he had on retail before, or Amazon did before, now it's just even exponentially more. And God, it's just like, fuck, it has to break. It has to shatter into 1,000 pieces.
Well, I mean, if you think about what is going to break, if you're talking about but if you're talking about the system under which we live, it's working more efficiently than ever, because the purpose of the current system that we have under capitalism is to have that, as you were saying, Chris, have that upward transfer of wealth from our pockets into theirs. And the more, and we talked about this, like, I think in like our second episode or something, where we were talking about Heather Bresch and, you know, Chris Klein and anyway, it was Mylan Pharmaceuticals, who was investing in coal, despite the fact that they are a company that makes respiratory drugs to stop you from like having asthma and shit like that. It's in their interest to have you more than ever dependent on their goods and services.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, if you think about the ways in which we needed to interact with our local economies, more and more of those interactions are being funneled through these mega corporations.
Right.
You know,
exactly,
there's a reason that a guy like, you know, Jeff Bezos and Google, and like even just like Verizon, you know, became wildly more wealthy, is because people need to use those services. We're now reliant on those services. Our children cannot have access to education without an internet service provider.
Right.
It's no longer siphoned through a public
and then the
good.
software or whatever too that is developed, you know.
Exactly. You no longer can interact with your employer by just being there. You now have to interact with them through some sort of software. And it was even a thing for those people that are that have moved to fucking Ohio, despite the fact that they were working in, you know, Mountain View, California or something like that. It's a thing now that those companies are like, we are going to pay you commensurate with the cost of living in the area you moved to. So it's not even like it's not even like, you know, you can try to be clever. And if you know, let's say you were a, you know, child of immigrants and you got a job at one of these tech companies because that's, you know, that was you know, the most utility that you could get for your skills. You can't even like have the prestige salary. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you had to move back home to Louisiana or something. I really like, you know, if we think about, like, I remember that news story coming out not too far after, I think it was like FDA approval of the Pfizer vaccine, that Alberto Mora, I think that's the name of the CEO of Pfizer, like cashed in a bunch of his stock options because the stock shot up. And why wouldn't he? It's his prerogative to do so. Fuck the optics. It's him. You know, I'm sure from his point of view, it's like, it's my life. It doesn't matter if I am, you know, capitalizing on, you know, billions of dollars of taxpayer money that has been poured into the company that I'm the chairman and CEO of, you know, or the fact that we tried to do a corporate inversion and we, you know, as we did on the Pfizer episode, it drew out and explained exactly how they're bilking the American taxpayer out of tens of billions of dollars every single year, out of tax money, because of their, you know, corporate structure and the fact that they haven't repatriated an enormous amount of their income. The era of the Biden administration will be an era of neo-feudalism, in which, you know, the majority of the ways in which we interact are going to be siphoned through these large tech companies. It's no mistake that a lot of their you know, the kind of rank and file people on the Biden transition team were directly from Lyft, Amazon, and Uber, because they know what's going to be. They can see what's going to be valuable. They can see where they've got their spots in there.
Speaking of neo-feudalism, right? Like, I've been thinking more and more these days about like the Black Death, and like obviously that had like a much higher return on interest.
Gotta bottle that. Gotta bottle that phrase too.
Dude, I get it. I spent a day, like actually more like an entire weekend back in like May, just reading about smallpox, just everything I could read about smallpox.
But yeah, back when the plague hit, right, when it hit Europe, it killed between like a third and half of people, and it was a lot more like varied to a certain extent because transmission back then, everything was not as super connected, so you could have like one village gets the plague and just everyone dies in it, whereas the next village over in the mountains nobody gets it and everybody survives, right? So it wasn't like equal across all communities. But, a consequence of that happening, right, is that like, and this is why there's a relevance to what we're talking about, was that like when so many people died so rapidly, right, in terms of like, the material conditions present there, right, like two major things happened. The first was, half as much property was now like up for grabs, right? Because people just died. So there was just like more shit, Well, obviously, I'm sure lots of it was not of particular use, but you'd have houses, property, tools, whatever, right? And so who was able to get those things? Well, obviously like wily raiders, entrepreneuring people. But beyond that, again, it was the people who already had money. People who already had power within that system were then able to acquire even a greater deal more, right? In the immediate aftermath of it. But it also then led to like, a competition in labor being able to happen, right? Because there were less workers, so people, or farmers and peasants and stuff, right? Like, so people were able to like negotiate slightly higher for various salaries, and the conflict between these two things led to like a number of like huge peasant revolts that happened. In the succeeding like decades, basically as a consequence, multi-generational consequence of this like plague coming and killing everybody. And of course, all of those peasant revolts were like ruthlessly crushed and killed. But it did sort of lead to the Renaissance, kind of. So, maybe we got that to look forward to in 100 years. There'll be a new age of
more marble
reason
statues
and culture somewhere on the horizon. I mean, most certainly not, but I don't know. There is like, if this continues to go on, right? Like, I don't know. There's obviously the hope that I have, the want, the kind of like mental health desire for things to go back to normal, right? I don't know if that's really going to happen, and I don't have confidence in like this new administration being like, I think we're past the threshold in terms of being able to like do anything very much to stop this. And again, not to like keep hitting it, but all that stuff like with the sort of practice of like the actual vaccine, like the vaccine was heralded as this moment, there's this brief moment of like, okay, people are going to start getting it, it's going to be okay. And now there's all these like equivocations about it. It's like, well, it might not last super long, both in terms of it being able to like help you, avoid the virus, but also in terms of like the shelf life of the vaccine itself. And we only produce so many. And on top of that, we're not really getting them to the right people. And there are like various fucking insane people who are in this chain of supply who like are QAnon or whatever, and are now like putting fucking anthrax in the vaccine, which then leads to then another cycle. I saw another thing where like, even in the places where they have the vaccine available and they're ready to give it, a lot of healthcare workers won't take it quite yet for a variety of different reasons. And honestly, not to espouse any kind of like general doubts about vaccines, I would understand if you're in that situation, if you have like questions or concerns or thoughts about it. And so all that leads to like, is that really going to be like this like shot in the arm long-term solution, or is it going to be like a minor tide which before like a fucking huge bump that now happens as a consequence of like the holiday travel and all that other shit that's been going on? Like, who knows where we're going to be by the time that like fucking Biden gets inaugurated on Zoom and is like looking into the wardrobe screaming about his pants or something. Like, I don't know if I have that much confidence that things are going to turn around quite so quickly, or even if we're going to be able to be at that point of battling with that administration about these various like points of like, I don't know, like welfare, progressive legislation or whatever. I don't even know if like that's going to happen. which is quite bleak, which is again why I like, I've been just kind of playing video games on my time off. I don't, obviously, I'm just speculating here, but
I don't know how to describe this feeling that I've been having. I mean, I think
misery.
Yeah, okay, that's actually a pretty good descriptor. You know what? You hit the
Despair.
nail on that. but I'm
Dread.
yes,
Yeah, that's
again,
another one.
very
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
Now that you mentioned
Clamful.
the mighty bivalve. I really feel this like strong pull towards like anger, and
Yes,
there's it's not misery in the sense that like I feel like just like lying down and just being depressed and stuff like that. I do that on my own time plenty. Like there's a pull, like a feeling like there is still a popular energy that exists. And I mean, if you think about like our administration that's going to govern us, the executive branch is going to be run by a septuagenarian. By Joe Biden is 78 years old. The House is run by an octogenarian. Nancy Pelosi is 80. She's 80 years old.
Mhm.
She's fucking 80 years old.
How old
Mitch
Dianne
McConnell.
Feinstein's like 87, isn't she?
I mean, at this point, it's just death becomes her. Like, it
Right?
doesn't-
Yeah, she needs to be in a fucking bathrobe somewhere, just shuffling around.
Exactly. And I how old is Mitch McConnell?
He's up there too. Is he?
He's like,
is he
80? I got it right here. He is 78 years old.
78 years old.
And so, like, when we think about what are the interests of these people, I mean, in the Supreme Court, I'm sure the average age of them is like, 54 or 60 or something like that, right? The interests of people do not align with the bulk of the population. And obviously, I don't just mean, obviously, we know that this is true economically, as far as like, their economic interests, but just like generationally and the goals that we have no choice but to accomplish for the future generations to even have, an arable land to live on. We don't have a choice. And it's just so fucking insane to me that we even have to have this fight with the institution that's supposed to safeguard us. But as you said, Shane, there's very much like historical precedent for when people are pushed to this brink. And even if for like people that aren't as, aren't on the like the absolute margins of society, and they're feeling that sort of critical mass of anguish and pain, and it's going to spill over into something. I don't even think we really even know what that is.
No,
but
of
I
course
think
not.
like I think like I feel it, and I feel entirely motivated to be very very emphatic this year, because there's just simply no choice. And if what we're seeing so far, if we're reading the tea leaves of the Biden administration, is to be entirely inactive, is to be super inert, is to to not immediately roll back the Trump tax cuts on the first 100 days, to not include reparations for the people that have been marginalized by the Trump administration. The fact that there's not like a day one program to reunite families that were separated at the border willfully by our
They're
government.
gonna keep the fucking camps open. They already
Exactly.
said.
The fact that they're not going to remunerate families that were affected by the Muslim ban, like on day one, is unconscionable to me. The fact that there's not like, a check being sent to every single person that lost a family member due to COVID is fucking bananas to me. And the best that they can do is just like have this fucking idiotic back and forth about $600 is give $2,000. It's fucking insane that this is even something that how paltry it is.
Yeah.
You can't push the electorate this far and not expect for it to explode into something very bad.
I mean, you mentioned it earlier, and the notion of like the federal government of the United States of America, lasting like the test of time, right? Like in my mind, like as somebody who has always been interested in history, and the more you study it, you realize like how contingent and fragile things are. And when you're in a particular moment, everything seems so like immutable and permanent, right? But if you take like the long view on things, like nothing lasts forever. Like most like great empires, like rarely last for a great amount of time, and even when they do, they're plagued with so many fucking problems that there are all these like weird historicizations, like arguing about like when can we really keep calling it this, when did it actually really fall apart, and like looking at it, and I think like given the multitude of crises we've faced, like basically throughout my lifetime and earlier in the last few decades, right? Like it's always been for me a question not of like whether or not this is going to continue, but more like what's it going to look like afterwards, right? And there's always been kind of like two broad categories of what that future looks like, and one of them is some kind of controlled, intelligently managed, ethical and moral like wind down, right? And that was for me always what I pegged as like the kind of goal or ambition for me, at least in terms of like what like the left as a kind of political project and movement could potentially do, because the alternative is like a wind down that's chaotic and disruptive and barbaric and cruel and horrible and mismanaged.
You don't say.
And like obviously a massive pandemic heightens all of these things and makes them considerably worse, even if in the short term it seems to strengthen the existing authorities, right? Like it shows all the various weaknesses of the system, and eventually it'll all like come crumbling down. And I was talking about this with Carrie the other day, and we were talking about like things falling apart, and she said something that, a lot of people have said to me at various points when I've brought this up, this sort of whatever apocalyptic vision of the future. And they say like, well, the difference is like America now is like very strong, like militarily, right? Like it can retain its power because it's like so strong. And it's like, well, okay, but like every empire ever has always been the strongest thing, and then they all end up like fucking collapsing like a house of cards at the end. Like, oops, what happened to your legions? Bye-bye. Like it happens. It happens one way or another. I mean,
this is the Visigoths, folks. They came. Bing, bing, bing.
I made a deal with Alaric. He said 5,000 pounds of pepper. I said, no way, no deal. 3,000 max. I've saved the Ravenna for another generation, folks. Come on. Luckily, the Ostrogoths, they don't have the gall to come at us. Oh, wait, they're invading us from Gaul.
No energy, Ostrogoths.
I mean, it does. It falls. It will fall, and I'm not trying to make any certain argument about like it's gonna happen this year or next year. It rarely like it's rarely like very clean. That's the distinction of like a true revolutionary period, when like people like charge the government offices and like burn all the shit and declare a new government, right? Like those things
Allegedly,
are more rare.
parody.
The more likely thing is things just sort of crumble very slowly to the point where stuff doesn't work. I mean, again, in terms of Rome, that's how it worked. It was just like
and we look to very much be in that stage.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a period in the crisis of the 3rd century where Rome basically just abandoned Britain, and that had been part of their empire for like a few hundred years, and they just one day they were just like, we can't afford to hold all this anymore, and they just left. And of course they left all their citizens and people there in the church, but all the government fucking officials, the military, they all just left. And then of course that island was beset by many succeeding waves of Germanic hordes. But the point is
still in one.
But the point is, like, that's how empires fall apart. They just like kind of say like, we're not going to take care of that area no more. And that already happened like during like the kind of wave of natural disasters that occurred when we were young, like in Katrina, when they were just sort of like,
Yes.
or like when Puerto Rico,
Yes.
a few years ago.
Yes.
That's what first came to mind, when they were basically just like, can we really maintain it anymore? I don't know. And that's in my mind how it'll happen. It'll just start like concentrating like bacteria and meat in the oven, It'll just start concentrating like closer and closer to the core until there's basically one mega city building that like Trump is emperor of, and then there's like a fucking barbed wire around that, and then everything else is just fucking Vandals and Visigoths and the Franks just fucking tearing down all the aqueducts and using them to
Yeah,
build
the,
little.
the Ruby Tuesdays, the Golden Corrals.
Yeah. That's the other thing. We don't even have any like giant architecture to dismantle. It's a bunch of fucking kindling attached to a strip mall. The one thing that probably will remain is just fucking asphalt. When everything else crumbles.
We've literally, like, just within the past few decades, just completely erased any long-term historical record of us personally, right? Because we leave no artifacts, we leave no writing, we leave no photographs.
We don't have time
anymore.
for art.
They're all fucking. It's all on the internet. We leave nothing personally, really.
There's no archaeology for that, right? Because mediums become so dead, and so like there'll just be this big blank, and that's why I really do think what we're living in now is the preceding moment of some kind of dark age. Because what will happen subsequent after this, whatever this is, they'll be like, okay, there's no electricity or it's very limited because there's no more fucking fossil fuel to burn. Or if it is, it's owned by all the people who live in the sky boats, the Musks, we call them. And we, the Morlocks, who live on the fucking, ground of the earth.
The boiling earth.
We have to, like, figure out, and then somebody will come and be like, oh my god, like, I have found a universal buzz stick. We can use this, like, we can plug this into the Western Digital, and everybody goes, all hail the Western Digital, and they go, and they plug it in, and it's literally powered by a bunch of children pulling a big wheel. And then it runs on, and then it's just, like, 2.5 episodes of our show doing like clam stuff, and they're like, was this precious knowledge? Was this what they worshipped?
Yeah, these gods.
It's gonna be Big Bang Theory if somebody put it on their thing because they ran out of internet.
That's why I always feared. That's why I stopped working in reality TV, because there was one night I was up doing the Too Cute shit, and I had this vision of like my future descendants, like, scavenging in some kind of old digital archive, and all they ended up getting was like raw footage of like baby goats going like on a blanket. And I was like, oh my god, no, I need to like record things about how to distill water. And then I realized I didn't know, and then I sobered up, so it didn't matter.
It's like we're like in fucking Back to the Future, like when the the photograph just fades and you're just like blinked out of existence.
Right,
it doesn't exist anymore.
Bing, bing,
bing, bing, bing. You saw them coming down one after another. Bing, bing, bing. I literally emailed a guy asking for this happened. This is how bleak it got over like kind of Christmas time. I emailed a guy that does like metal screaming lessons, and I was like, I think I'm interested. What are your rates? I don't know. I just felt kind of.
Is this to say like metal as in the genre of music, screaming of that sort? Okay, because in my mind, I imagine shouting into like plates of copper and stuff.
I mean, that's literally what I'm doing right now to my dynamic
I guess that's
microphone.
True. That is true.
Yeah, I'm just saying. It's possible I might have a career as a metal screamer. That'll be socially useful in the American provisional government of 2022.
I always thought my best chance is like old wise man storyteller. Like there's no other potential job opening for me in the wasteland. Either I tattoo everything all over my body and like I have like the written word on me, and I use that. Otherwise I'm just like strapped to the front of somebody's war machine with my blood being sapped slowly out of it. There's like of course you watch a film like Mad Max or whatever, you could fantasize and be like, oh, I'm a raider. No chance. Easily killed by the other raiders day one. Like there's absolutely, I just have to convince them that I know magic because I remember like some things about the past or like how to make drugs. Like that's my best option.
I would love to be like huddled up to you, like kind of like at your feet, listening to this old wise man in kind of like a Book of Eli scenario where you're just telling me about like, how to use a divining rod or something. I'm ready for it.
I'll just make a bunch of sundials right now and have them just in case.
We don't have enough sundials. Frankly,
They don't make sundials anymore. They
Then
don't
why
make
is
they don't
that?
make them like they used to, folks.
folks, you haven't told the time until you had it from a sundial, folks. I mean, he really sounded like a lounge singer there. You haven't had to tell the time.
Our sad boy president is going away.
I've really I honestly almost just forgotten about him already. I mean, that might be like the Civ 6. I've kind of tuned everything out. But yeah, I don't know.
It's almost like I thought about it. We almost felt like really like there was an addiction to the kind of like fear and the rage, because now we're just like kind of in this like low, there is no hope sort of thing, but at least you had something like we could fight against. But like, because every day for the period of like 3.5 years, it was like every day there was something to fight against.
What would the Mad King do that day? Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, that's again, that's a big part of it as well. Like this sort of just never say what you will about Trump, but it's never boring, right? Like Joe Biden is just boring. Like he's just like I said earlier, he's just a black hole of energy, just a sucking void of nothingness, right? At least Trump is, I don't know. There's something to get tuned in for, and I think that's one of my really big fears is that a lot of people are just going to tune out, right? Like once,
for sure,
all that energy you're talking about, especially from the normal Democratic Party or whatever, like that's all going away.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that was the whole celebration of like when he lost.
Right. It's over.
Right? Yeah.
That's
like
fucking Bush on the aircraft carrier.
The nightmare is done. Like we can go back to. What?
Right.
Like you can't go outside.
Yeah.
I mean, we joked about it on an earlier episode, but I really think the very likely chance, right, is because Trump up until the last minute is going to refute this and say I didn't lose, whatever, boo-hoo me. Today he posted something about the spineless cowards who have surrendered in the Republican Party, and that immediately made me think of the stab in the back thing. And so I think he'll probably leave office in some kind of ignominious way. He won't attend the ceremony.
I don't think
shit.
so.
Yeah,
I don't think he will.
And,
no way.
And then what he'll do is he'll just start campaigning again.
Yeah.
He'll just
and he'll get the funding to
and
do
that's
it.
what he
he'll spread the virus.
Yeah.
He'll just keep spreading it no matter what the federal government does now to try to keep it under control.
And then in 2024 he gets elected again. He's like, folks, Joe Biden, he had 4 years, he blew it. It's worse than it ever was.
Right.
Yeah, there's nothing to stop him.
Campaigning and doing big rallies, that's what he likes. He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't give a shit about sitting in fucking meetings and actually doing president stuff. He likes to fucking speak before an adoring crowd. That's what he always liked.
It's so terrifying just thinking of him doing a fucking coming to the Nassau Coliseum to do it.
Yeah.
And it's just
Trump
everybody
featuring Foghat, guest stars Foghat.
Yeah, just
at the Raceway Complex.
Like a fucking like a blast from an epicenter, just COVID just emanates out of him.
Yeah.
Just a fallout of COVID being shed by this guy. He's just gonna become the fucking Johnny Appleseed of COVID, going around the country.
Just Trump towers or plague obelisks that he just seeds in the earth as he walks about.
He's old faithful for COVID, noon on the dot, just and it just comes out of him.
Oh man.
Oh god.
Do you want to do the phone call since we're on Trump?
Oh fuck.
What
fucking phone call. Oh,
can we do a tight 5 on that or?
Yeah, the George. Did you listen to that?
I haven't listened to it.
No, I don't even know what you're talking about.
The phone call that Trump had with the Georgia Secretary of State.
Oh, I saw some shit about it, but I haven't heard it or I don't know any details.
It is stunning.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, it's not okay. I mean, look, but basically, he was just you know what I'm gonna do in my last 3 weeks of being in office? I'm just gonna do federal crimes.
No way.
Oh, dude!
He said that he didn't say those words.
No. He didn't say those words, but he was. This is. I mean, I'm paraphrasing.
Sure.
I'm paraphrasing. It's not inaccurate. He was just basically told the Secretary of State, the Secretary of State of Georgia to be I need to find 11,000 votes. we just need to overturn this. And he was like, Greg, are you sure that Dominion didn't change the machines?
Oh,
And
man.
he's like just flatly, he was just like, no. Like, it was actually pretty interesting to listen to, like,
and that is such a good example of how Trump really, at his core, is just he's the bewildered elderly on the internet. He's just a Facebook boomer. He sees something like Dominion swamped millions of votes. It's like, oh yeah, they did. I don't think he really believes it. I think he really does.
yeah.
I don't think he's lying.
But after he says no, he's like, okay, but maybe do you think that they changed some of the internal machinery of they didn't swap them out, but they changed some of the parts? And he was like, Mr. President, no. Like, it was interesting to, like, hear, in comparison to Trump, like a relatively low level, Republican official, just like flatly just being like, no. And the fact that it was leaked at all and published in its entirety to the Washington Post shows you that A, somebody was recording it, and B, a Republican leaked it.
Yeah, the White House, someone from the White House probably leaked it. They record all their. Remember, very early on, they leaked those calls between him and the Australian Prime Minister.
Yes.
Oh, the local milk people. A classic, a real classic. I gotta say too, in terms of thinking towards this administration, you've already seen that language of like we're looking forward, not back, and it's unbelievable. Like, even if you were just like a liberal, right, and you've been so wound up over Trump for fucking 4 years now, right, and it's so blatant, his like nepotistic corruption, like lies, like it's so obvious, and to be like, we're not gonna like look into that or prosecute that. We're just gonna pretend like the American ship of state has been sailing smoothly, and this is just a little bump in the water. Like put him in jail. Like,
yes.
like
yes.
Moscow show trial. Like,
yes.
Do something. I just saw, by the way, speaking of what might happen on the 6th. I guess Trump is in Georgia right now doing a campaign event.
Yes,
and
he is.
Just a deluge of COVID coming off of
and Loeffler came on stage and said, I have an announcement, Georgia. On January 6th, I will object to the Electoral College vote. That's right, we're going to get this done. So I guess on the 6th, he's going to have a parade of his sycophants or whoever, people coming up being like, we're not going to do the vote or whatever.
This is like she's like the richest senator in the United States. So she's like one of the richest politicians in the United States. This just is aside from Trump, this like is the business plot. Like, she's just like, right, no, we're not gonna take it.
We're not gonna take it. No, we ain't gonna. Oh, they're 100% gonna play that, and then Macho Man when Trump comes on stage, and then we're not gonna take it.
I love Trump dancing. Macho
It's
Man.
really incredible stuff.
God, he is.
I think there could be a exciting little bit of news on the 6th. We'll see. There could be a little fun.
We will keep you in suspense.
A little last hurrah for the man of the spectacle, right?
Little last hurrah for the podcasting class. Oh wow. Yep. Folks, it's just another gray day in the crumbling American empire. Sure, your bridges don't work, but it's just, we're having a good time while it's going down. We're the fucking band on the Titanic as it's going down.
but we're playing Macho Man and Trump is dancing. But like on cellos and stuff.
Yes. I'm classically trained for 25 years to be able to play Macho Man.
No, you're just doing metal screaming. We're like playing it very like serenely. And you're just going, Macho Man.
I'm doing the pig squeal to Macho Man. I haven't taken the lessons yet, so I've got to work on it. Right. Can't do it. I don't feel terribly well. Stay cool.
Stay cool,
right,
folks.
Take it easy, everybody.
I'm in pain. Stay cool.